All right, so now we're gonna do a composite in Houdini instead of in Nuke. If you're interested in Nuke, go check out the previous chapter. Otherwise, this will look exactly the same in Houdini's own compositing area. So we don't need the scene view anymore. Let's go over to composite view. I switched over to the IMG area. That's where your compositing networks will be. You can make, it's actually the only node you can make is an image network. You might as well just use the one that's here, comp1. And here we are. Some of the nodes will sound familiar to you, like file. Instead of reading geometry, and this time we're going to read images in. So we'll go here and we'll say, let's go find out, let's find those EXRs we rendered out from Mantra earlier. And there it is. And you can scrub and do everything you expect you can do. You can middle click and you can see there's our image planes that we want. Just like in the Nuke chapter, what we're going to want is to channel copy. This is basically the equivalent of the shuffle node in Nuke. What we want to say is, oh, I need the sunlight target, or rather, I need the sunlight here, set it to the color here. So we're saying we're sourcing, let me make this bigger for a second. We're sourcing from input 1 the obj sunlight direct and copying it into C, which is of course the RGBA color business here. So I'm going to call this the key. Copy and paste that. This one will be the skylight, which is the env. Oopsies. There we go. I'm going to need our volume light, which was called vol. This is all basically trying to duplicate what we did in the Nuke lesson. Direct emission, I'll call that fire. So now we have all of these things. As before, if I take a layer is going to be what adds everything together, as opposed to a merge node, which you might think would be the one that does it. If I say add, there you go. This is our original image, and this is the new image added from all the constituent pieces. So now we're sure we have everything that we need up here. One of the main things that we wanted to do in here was bring this down. Right now, this key light is too bright, or put another way, I want it to just be darker. I want it to be like a blacker color here. And the environment light is pretty good already. I'll put this here anyway here for completeness. I think we bumped it up a little bit, just a smidgen. And, you can always just keep this one as the one that's visible, and you can, turn it on and off. If you want, you can press, oopsies. You can press 1 over here to see. You can actually have more than one visible. So I have the brightness one visible on the right, and our cool guy over here on the left. But I don't actually need that right now. But it is a cool way to work. The volume, if you recall from before, we ended up blurring that slightly just to get rid of some of that pixelation. We can just keep the default there probably. The brightness on this we made much brighter. We made it up to around 6. So now we're starting to see it come together the way it looked like in our Nuke thing from before. Fire here as well. We just peak this up just a little bit. As you can imagine, there's not exactly a one-to-one for everything. So the hue shift over here would be built out of a few nodes, but mostly what I wanted to get to is I wanted to make this a little bit more orange. So I'm just going to shift it over just slightly, something like that. I don't know. Something like that, so it's just a little bit more orangey, and we'll keep the red coming from our actual volume light itself. We're going to want to approximate that glow also. And the glow, as the glow was a combination of nodes in Nuke. Here, we actually don't want to use limit. We need to use, oh no, I reorganized it. We want to use levels. What we're trying to do here is we're going to want a threshold. We're trying to threshold down just to the brightest areas. So what I'm effectively doing is saying, hey, you know, crush the brights here and just completely lose the blacks. So there we go. Here, something like that. I think actually, I seem to recall it being 0.365 before nuke. It stands out in my mind. One of the issues you'll have here, though, is that this is going to send a lot of values, and I'm going to press I here, into the negative. See the 3 numbers right below that little black box there? A lot of these numbers are negative now, and they're going to screw us up in a minute. So that's actually where we're going to need the limit for. Putting the limit here will truncate it. So now if I look here, you'll see it's 0, 0, 0. The reason why that matters is because with the blur, the blurring will have major problems with the negative numbers. We had a radius of 80 before back in Nuke. What that basically means is we'll need this to be double that here, because this is saying the filter size, so from all the way from left to right, 160, as opposed to the radius being, you know, half of that. If I turn the limit off, you'll see what I mean. We get anything. We're blurring negative numbers over our positive numbers and basically ending up with 0. So that's no good. But we can just add that right on top of this. As you can see, just it's adding that same glow. And if I come back over here, you can see it's the same principle. It's just finding the bright areas, blurring it really wide, adding it back on top. Some people will do this and have, like, you know, multiple levels of it. Maybe you'll have like a wide blur, and then maybe you'll have a sharper blur, and then you'll have different, oh, speaking of which, different brightnesses for each. This did seem a little bright. So we'd want to bring this down substantially. So something like that is good. And that is, that's basically it. We end up with a much more interesting explosion than what we started with. I'll bring the one business in here now. So I say, like, this is what we had before, and this is what we have after now. Much more cinematic and interesting on the right side here. These dark smoke and these bright, warm colors, like juice flowing throughout. I don't know, maybe I'm getting carried away, but that's kind of what it looks like to me. For the sake of simplicity, I just ended up saving my, let's see, I saved my checkerboard from Nuke just so that I could have it be, I mean, you can of course make a checkerboard in Houdini, but I just wanted to use the same exact one that we had just so you could compare the two. There we go. And now, oh, there we go. We want to have a, aha, what is this reminding us? This is reminding us that the alpha is wrong. So if I look at here, we're actually getting alpha from, not only, we're actually adding all of the alphas from all of these, and it's treating this alpha also. It actually blurred our alpha. So that's not good. What we're going to want to do is do another one of these channel copies, where we're going to say, hey, how don't we read a channel? We'll read the alpha channel from our second input here and copy it to the first one. So we'll say A, and we'll say the source will be, there you go. The source is input 2, hit the alpha from that. So we're saying get the alpha from the original node, copy it to this one. And as usual, disable it, you can see what it would have looked like. It's just wrong in several ways. But now it's right. And now if I go here, there we go. Now it looks right. And that's it. So we ended up with a much cooler, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, a much more interesting explosion. And as before, in case you missed my the actual Nuke chapter, it's just, it had a nice filmic look to it. We could pull back the brightness on these bright spots if we needed to or wanted to. I would say it's better to keep it, because that's what it would look like on film. It just would blow out the sensor or film or what have you. If we had an environment, you know, we'd be casting light into it and shadows. Or we have the light interaction with itself here, which looks nice. Yeah, I think this came out pretty good. We could just let it cache here for a second. Actually working faster than Nuke for me today. I don't even know why. Maybe I'll work in Houdini comp more often. I don't know. It's working pretty well. So we've got stuff like this in the beginning here. You might want to speed past this. Sometimes I'll apply like a time warp to this in order for it to get to the rest of the explosion faster. It'll make it seem more sudden, if you will. Those will all be artistic choices for you to make if you want. In the meantime, that's about the end of this. You just write this out. You can use we can basically just output this now with a ROP file thingy here, just your comp, and that's about it. You do your frame range. You put, all the usual stuff, takes, things of that nature, and you're off to the races. Bam. We can come back in a minute to see where we end up. And so this is the result, all rendered into the mplay window directly. You can see lots of cool shapes. You can see all this nice, really small detail in the smoke, thanks to our noisy, our noise texture that we advected through. We've got nice light interaction on the smoke, as I've said many times now, but I just like to keep pointing it out. Nice and dark, it's sooty. We could cast light into the scene if we had it. Yeah, it just holds up. It just holds up quite nice. Great work, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson. If you actually want to save your files, actually, by the way, if you actually want to save your files, you'd put that here. You'd go here, you'd save it somewhere. Use a $F. To say like, oh, I want to call it frame, like that, something like that. And then when you do the render, it would save to that area. But I don't need to do that. So there it is. So once again, hope you enjoyed this lesson. That's it, finally, for all of the volume simulation lessons. I hope you enjoyed the full 6-part series that this was. What a long, strange trip it's been. I'll see you soon for some other kinds of dynamics. Get excited.